Welcome to the Journey of Self-Growth podcast, episode 20. I am Kite, the host of this event, which is created so myself and others can share perspective on the concept of it in hopes that one another's journeys will be relatable, establishes awareness, and inspires listeners to adopt and maintain such behavior. The definition of self-growth is the process of developing new skills, attitudes, actions, or reactions that can have a beneficial impact on your life and increases your overall well-being. For those interested in being a part of this experience, which can result in your own personal growth, you can reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook at Kete, Kete .music on Instagram, or Kite Smith on Facebook. Today's featured guest is Mr. Tom Johnston. Hello, Tom. How are you?
Doing well. Good to be here, Kite.
I'm glad you're here as well. What can you tell me about yourself?
Well, first of all, I've known Kite for a good while. That's fun. And we ran into each other recently, and he let me know about this opportunity. As far as myself, grew up in Southern California, went to Cal Berkeley in this general vicinity, met my wife soon thereafter, and we have lived here in the Bay Area, and in Hawaii, and in Southern California, and back again in the Bay Area. Our three daughters, we have three adult daughters. Each of them is, two of them live together in Southern California, where I just came from. Just got on a plane from there in Burbank and got here at our home in Pinole, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area. We have one grandchild. Our middle daughter has birthed Yvette, and then my second grandchild is on the way, in the oven, as they say, and we know his name. His name is Logan River Sema, and he's a young man, and we will get acquainted with him when he's born shortly, in the next month or two. Married 40 years to my wonderful wife, appreciating her more every day, and her name is Pierrette, just like Pierre, but add the "et" part. So, what else can I tell you? I've been a pastor and in Christian ministry for 30 years or so, full time, and then in the last 5 years doing that part time, and also a full time now teacher. I teach mathematics at the high school level, just getting my credential now in the last year. And so I've been doing that as the other part of my time. My wife owns a floral business. She arranges flowers for weddings and other events, as well as coordinates those events. And we recently owned a business that went belly up when COVID hit. I can tell you more about it, but we were delivering restaurant food to businesses. And when the COVID hit, nobody went to work. And definitely, even if they did go to work, they didn't have meetings. And those meetings were the fare that we were providing from various restaurants here on in our vicinity. And so within 1 month, we lost 90% of our business. And that's when I had to realize, well, maybe I should look into being a teacher at the high school level and pursued that at that point. I
Wow.
don't know. I'll stop there. Any questions? Oh,
Well, I am curious to know. I like the name of your recent grandson. His name
yeah.
is Logan River. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Logan River.
Okay. What
His middle
inspired?
name is River.
Yes. What inspired them to choose that name? If you know.
I think twofold. One was the nature of rivers, and the other is the nature of their faith in Jesus. Rivers are flowing, refreshing, um, often cool, as in temperature, and fresh water, and just a source of refreshment. And that notion, they wanted to speak forth into their son, in hopes that their son would be that for others. And then I would just say both Kelsey and Dan, my son-in-law, and my daughter, are they're very refreshing to the people around them. Very well loved. We had 60 people at the baby shower. It was a co-ed baby shower. People were saying, in part due to who Dan and Kelsey are, but also due to my wife's ability in putting together a party. Um, they were saying this is the funnest baby shower they'd ever experienced, and the integration of all the themes were so well done, and comprehensive, that they had much praise. And so that's the event that I flew back from. My wife will drive back up. Um, but River, the second basis is in John chapter 10, the Gospel of John in the Bible, telling the story of Jesus. Jesus said, for those who believe in him, that out of them would flow rivers of living water.
Mm,
And the picture that we get there, oh, actually, John chapter 7, my bad. John chapter 7, that's where it's found. Um, so to know Jesus is to be a river of life for other people as well. And that's true of my son in law and my daughter, additionally. So, um, so River is an apt name for my son and my daughter and son-in-law to name their son.
yeah, I like the combination of Logan and River. It sounds catchy at the least. I also
Logan has something Scottish, or you'd have to look it up, but there's some historic usage of that name, and yeah,
interesting.
I forget.
There is a comment that came in through Instagram because we are streaming from Instagram.
Cool.
It comes from a friend of mine. His name is Ahmad Dillahunt. He said, what's up, Pastor Tom? Pastor Tom in
Hey,
the building. Do you know Ahmad?
the name sounds familiar. Yes.
Yeah, I think he knows you as well. He's a golfer. He teaches golf at the Berkeley High School. He's been playing golf for many a years, but he's a good
That's
guy.
great.
Yeah. So,
Great.
I mean, for those who are listening and would like to ask questions or make a statement while we are conversing in this podcast, I invite you to do so, and I will try to address those questions or statements as we proceed. The next question for you, Tom, is what would be your perspective on the concept of self growth?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I'd like to circle back. Then I just kind of gave you the bare bones of my life experience. Um, and with regard to self growth, growth doesn't happen unless we are able to frame the negative things that happen to us um, properly. We will give up. We will fail to grow. We will throw in the towel. We will get discouraged if we are not able to see the negative things that happen to us in a positive light. And secondarily, no growth occurs without negative experiences.
Mm.
There has to be resistance. Strength, physical strength, muscular strength doesn't happen unless muscles are torn down and broken down through usage and exertion.
Mm-hmm.
And mental growth doesn't happen unless we're frustrated. I'm a teacher, and we've been studying education and also how the brain works and how the mind works and how growth mindset is a perspective toward learning where we can grow, but it requires difficulty, angst, problems, troubles, resistance. And this is kind of the struggle that we can often have. Um, I tell my students that this is necessary, and they come into school sometimes. And I think this is partly due to our own culture. The American culture is kind of success oriented and individualistic oriented, and you're a failure if you're not a success in some way tangible to demonstrate to others. And so there's a sense that we should, as we're trying to learn a subject, be it math or any other subject, that it should come relatively easy for us if we are inclined toward that. And I know you talk about the different learning styles, and we think, well, if I'm a math person, it should come to me easily. Or if I'm good with art or music, or if I'm good with electronics or programming, it should come to me easily, or else I'm not good at it, or I'll never be good at it. And that resistance, that difficulty, if we persevere through it, we will become smarter. I tell my students, if you want to be smarter tomorrow with the material we're studying today, you need to stick with it and focus on it for a good amount of time, a class period. Don't get distracted by other things unless you need a little break. Then come right back to it. And it has to be hard. You have to be looking at it, focusing on it, puzzling over it, wondering about it, ruminating about it, trying to solve it, talking to others about it, taking notes, thinking of it from another angle. You have to work at it. It has to be hard, and you have to work hard. And if you combine those two things with a good night's sleep, tomorrow you'll be smarter, I tell them.
That's an
In
interesting.
this regard, in this realm.
Yeah.
And so growth requires difficulty, and it requires framing difficulty as for our good. So in math or in any other subject, as I'm telling you, a learner has to have a hard time with that concept, that unit, that problem. They have to find something that they want to learn because it's so hard, and they persevere. It has to be problematic, persevering, and then get a good night's sleep. And your brain will have changed.
Mm-hmm.
I think also, Kite, I think there's also the spiritual change. There's a greater willingness to face difficulty. Um, I I'm preparing for a sermon this Sunday in John chapter 11, where Lazarus, a good friend of Jesus, is gonna die. And we've all heard about Lazarus rising from the dead if we've been around the Bible at all, or Christians. We may not have heard it, but it starts that chapter. I'm just improvising a little bit by saying Jesus knew that his friend Lazarus was about to die. So he stayed away for 2 more days. That's backwards. If he's a good friend, he should have come to the rescue, heal him. But instead, he resisted that temptation and waited. And he said the reason was is because he wanted to show the glory of God in the life of Lazarus. And the glory of God in that story, that episode in Jesus's life, was for Lazarus actually to experience death and be raised from the dead 4 days later. And so there was difficulty, struggle. He had to go through death to experience glory and life in a totally unique way. And it's in that chapter where Jesus declares himself, where he says, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will have eternal life as well, even though they die. So there it is, dying. We still have to go through death to experience life. Jesus experienced it. We too, and even Lazarus. So that's the crazy thing. He loved him, so he stayed away.
Mm-hmm.
So Lazarus could experience that setback. And then it would be framed as a God glorifying experience. So I might be rambling at this point, but as I reflect back on my own life, Kite, I have to tell you that almost every ministry job that I ever had, I was fired from.
Wow.
Before you think, boy, this guy must be a lousy pastor, um, and you might be right. Uh, I mean, I could say with the InterVarsity campus ministry, I was let go after 13 years. With Trinity, where I know you, Kite, because I was the pastor there. I was pastor there for nearly 15 years, and they let me go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Partly because the church wasn't growing, and they were concerned about that. I was a part of a Lutheran Chinese congregation, the English speakers from the Chinese Lutheran Church. They let me go, and um, I have had a tendency to look back at my past and think, gee, my career is a series of let goes,
Mm-hmm.
of firings. And okay, I took it in stride and I kept trying. And even the business that we owned, I was fired because, the business fired me because of COVID. We weren't able to do that. And we lost a chunk of money.
Mm.
Was going to be our retirement. So I could look at that and go, God has been faithful. He's continued to give me a trust in Him and good friends. But dag nabbit, everything ended with a failure.
Mm.
And I could look at it in that perspective, and it's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
But I was reflecting back on also another lens through which I could look at my past and my career is there were a series of probably 8 to 10 I could cite situations where somebody who knew me recommended an idea to me.
Mm-hmm.
They saw something and they said, you might want to try this. And it ranged from the manager at the restaurant I was a busboy for when I was in a freshman in college, said, you should go to Stanford. Stanford? What's Stanford? And you should apply to Stanford and Cal Berkeley because, you could do that. I'd never even thought of that. My parents didn't advise me that way. None of my friends recommended it to me. I was content with going to the nearby community college and then a campus, state college. So from that to you should go and get a degree in religion, and I'm going to pay for it. And you'd be really good as a tutor. Why don't you go get the CSET training in mathematics. And you could be a substitute teacher. Why don't you get a CBEST training? And all these people, without my even looking for a career path, advised me. And thank God I had the openness to learn from them. So, ironically, I could look at my past. I'm 68 years old.
Mm.
I could look at my past and say, yeah, it's a series of being let go. But in recent days, I've actually started to catalog these occasions and conversations where somebody noticed something in me and suggested something, and I responded positively to that. And that would be another way of framing my life.
Hmm.
That in spite of the failures, there were always these loving people or interested parties giving me a suggestion.
Hmm.
And it was always just through organic connections,
Hmm.
just the people I knew, seeing me doing whatever I was doing and saying, hey, you might want to try this. And thank the Lord, that's another way of looking at my past. And I think growth for all of us, if we can embrace pain, difficulty, setbacks, and if we can frame them as the path toward growth, um, growth is more likely. And I think that's the way God works with us. God is not interested in, um, there's a great book called it's advice for married couples, and Tim Keller wrote it with his wife Kathy. Um, Tim has since passed, but the book had a subtitle. It was um, "Marriage is not made for our happiness, but for our holiness."
Hmm.
Holiness means we are becoming more loving, more able to give ourselves to others and to God.
Hmm.
Holiness means set aside for God's use, and it doesn't mean snooty nosed looking down at other people. Holiness is about set aside for God's use to invest in other people. So marriage is kind of like two pieces of sandpaper. Rub them together, and eventually they both become very smooth.
Hmm.
Um, Marriage is about breaking off our rough edges of indifference, of self sufficiency, of um, pride, of arrogance, of uh, lack of servanthood. And if we will respond in marriage to those difficulties, because no two people, certainly no two people that are mature, are going to agree on everything. So, maturity and marriageability does not mean you're not going to disagree and have arguments. What do you do with those arguments is the most important thing. So, the difficulty of marriage isn't about just making me happy. You be everything I need you to be so that I will then be happy. Marriage is about God using that other person to break off our rough edges and make us more like Jesus, more of a loving, giving, compassionate, sacrificial, looking out for the underdog kind of person.
I want to ask you a question regarding that statement. You said marriage is about looking out for the next person and helping to smooth the next person who is in the marriage. What experience would you refer to in your marriage or relationship with your wife that would demonstrate that expression?
There have been many times that um, I've I've had to where where Perrette has been the kind of sandpaper I needed. It's not that she was abrasive, but there was a tough situation. Um, Oftentimes, when it comes to a disagreement or an emotionally charged experience that we are in the midst of, my tendency is to want to make my point, want to win the argument, want to make things happen the way I want them to be. But when I do that, it doesn't go well for us. There's friction. If instead, when there's a disagreement or an emotionally charged moment, if I listen to her and heed what she's said, that causes me to be different. And then very often, if she not only just says what she's experiencing in terms of her emotions and what's going on, if she also shares how it makes her feel, that brings out compassion in me. For instance, maybe a theoretical situation. You know, Tom, when you forgot to empty the dishwasher, it made me feel, she might say, made me feel neglected and uncared for. And part of me wants to do everything right, want to make sure I empty the dishwasher and do everything in a timely manner. And when she brings it to my attention, I don't want to hear it. She's the enemy. She's telling me something I'm not doing right. And I'm playing the game, be a good husband and do everything just right. And all that game I'm playing in my head doesn't allow me to listen to her. If instead I say, you know, honey, I see that it disappoints you and you feel let down, that makes me sad. And we pause, we talk about it, we come to the same feeling, and then I will be more likely to do the dishes or empty the dishwasher for the right reasons. Not just so that I'm a good husband, but because I'm trying to love this person, my wife, more adequately. And part of loving her is to be aware of the fact that it made her feel disappointed and have empathy for that feeling of disappointment. So there have been numerous times where friction has occurred between us. And if I will pause and listen, and similarly, if she will pause and listen to the emotions that are going on inside us, we're better off. A helpful book we've been reading is How We Love by a couple who are marriage counselors. And their premise, it comes out of the whole attachment theory of how children develop. Attachment theory supposes and proposes that every one of us, the way we gained attachment to our parents affect us into our adult life. So the premise is all of us feel disconnected and stressed until we get attachment to others. So our kind of a starting point for all of us is a point of need, stress, anxiety. And when we have that anxiety as an infant and our parents don't read that anxiety well, attend to it and address it and validate it in the process. Read it, validate it, attend to it, and then address it. If they don't do that perfectly, and they won't, because all of us are imperfect, we all have problems with the way we love others. So their inadequacies, we develop strategies deep in the past, in our childhood. We develop strategies for how to gain relief from our anxieties. And some of these strategies are called pleasing. We try to please people, make them happy. So if they're happy, then I'll feel happy. Or we maybe avoid emotion and don't want to talk about emotion. And as long as we don't bring up the subject, then I'll be okay. And I don't want to attend to your emotions. I don't even know what my emotions are. I don't know what my anxieties are. I don't even care to know yours. That's a second strategy. And there are 5 different strategies in the How We Love book by Kay and Milan Yankovic or something like that. I forget their last name, but it's a well known book. So my point is, um, as we as individuals know what our strategies are, what our style is, and then what that does to others, both to injure them, and then what we need to do and need from them so that we can um, not have to give in to our anxiety, the more we're going to become a loving person. And they even say more loving like Jesus. Because Jesus, as we look at him in the Gospels, he didn't practice any of these 5 ways of being. He actually had what's known as um, what I guess mature attachment. And that's the wonderful thing is, as we know about these tendencies that we have and make effort to work against them. In other words, we face the challenges of growing. And if we don't change and change in the way we relate to others, we won't grow. And similarly, we won't be able to love them very well. Um, but if we do, it's wonderful to know that we can be different and we can be mature attached, attached in a mature way to other people. I'm not sure there's a different term for it, but they use a different term. But the takeaways from the book is um, we can grow and become less and less what the pattern is of our past, and that doesn't have to define us any longer. Nevertheless, that very often is our go-to in a place of anxiety, much like an alcoholic. At Alcoholics Anonymous, they all say their name and they say, I'm an alcoholic, even if they haven't had a drink in 30 years. They realize that it's a vulnerability. And yes, they've grown to a great extent, but they know that they still have clay feet. They have a weakness that's there. And that's a good thing. It puts them in a place where they need others and they need God. And again, growth doesn't happen unless we realize um, that pain is going to be a part of it. And we embrace pain, as frame it as a path toward greater love for others and for God.
What I want to comment on was the framing of pain, and also reflecting on your comment regarding your business that went under and how you lost money. In addition to that business, the various jobs that you were fired from, and how you thought about these these experiences, and they could be perceived as failures, and which could lead to self-doubt. I think the value of those experiences were an enhancement of your perspective of the present moment, which we're currently living in. And I think if those things happened in the past, I feel like it makes the present even more valuable, because we're still able to stand and act in the present, which allows us to persevere and hopefully experience a opportunity that will be sustainable for us. And it seems like the present is what matters, or what is valuable, because even though you lost the business, it's still possible for you to act and experience quote unquote success in context to a profession. So that's what I took from the commentaries regarding you losing the business, and I think my perspective of experiences regarding quote unquote failures or losses helped me to attain that realization. So I can relate to what you're saying.
Mhm.
Also, I think that um, well, there was a question that I wanted to ask you, but can you relate to what I shared regarding the value of the present?
Yeah, on several levels. First of all, Kite, I felt loved and cared for and validated by you just now because you remembered those episodes that I'd mentioned and you paused to take note of it. And yes, this is a context where you're trying to interact with me about it, but not always do we acknowledge that in others, and pause and say, "Gee, I see that. I see you mentioned that, and that must have been tough." Or, "What have you learned from it?" That is so meaningful. Just your approach and your recollection of that. Thank
Hmm.
you for caring for me that way. Um, growth. Can you rephrase your question? Say it again. I just wanted to let you know I felt cared for. That was the most important thing. There was something else of your comments that you wanted me to reflect on. Could you restate them,
It's
please?
it's okay because you what you just said actually help to remind me of what I wanted to ask you.
Go
Um,
for it.
so that question is regarding relationships and the willingness to listen to people who appreciate us as individuals, which you said can result in it can result in growth, or also it can result in changing of the individual by them having a willingness to listen versus being argumentative,
Hmm.
and how valuable a personable or intimate relationship can be. Um, and so, what I realize when it comes to relationships is, is it's important to be aware, which allows you to also be present. I think awareness is essential to a healthy relationship, and I reference what you had said when Perret made the commentaries about washing the dishes, rather than having making a point of which can be perceived as you wanting to be in the right. You chose to go an alternative course and listen to what she said. That to me indicates that you have a sense of awareness of what was happening in that instant.
Hmm.
And I think in order to have a flourishing relationship, awareness is vital. And I think when it comes to awareness and conceptualization are two distinct activities. One cannot it seems one cannot be aware while also conceptualizing, because if and I'll use an example.
Interesting.
I'll give you an example. I'm currently wearing headphones, and let's say I'm listening to music. By me listening, I'm aware of the vibrations that are coming through my headset. But if as I'm listening to this music, I start to conceptualize in my head and tell myself, listen to the music. It will be redundant for me because I'm already aware of
Yeah,
what is happening. And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
what you had said earlier was that previous to the encounter to Perret, you may have been in your head thinking about things, and the unexpectancy of her expressing herself could be perceived as an inconvenience to your conceptualizing or being in your head. But by having an openness and a willingness to be aware of what's happening, that helps you to navigate or address the situation in the present.
Yeah. I could give you an example from early in our marriage. When I first was there were some problems in my supervision in our staff team with the InterVarsity ministry in Hawaii. The problems there was some friction in the staff team, but we were dealing with it, and thankfully, I think we were making progress. Long story short, Purette and I were sent to another state
Mm-hmm.
to go get counseling. Now, probably what happened is perhaps illegal, or at least not the way business or ministries should work, and that's been resolved. But at the time, Purette was dealing with this the grief of being removed from our home and sent to a new place, and the grief of that was overwhelming her,
Mm-hmm.
as it was me.
Mm-hmm.
We went to a counselor, and this dear couple of counselors tried to help us make sense of this, and it turned out to be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
At the onset, I was so stricken with what did I do wrong, and I believe I'm kind of a performance-oriented person.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking in terms of what did I do wrong, where did we go wrong, what should I have done differently, and how painful that was.
Mm-hmm.
And the counselors helped me at the time to attend to my wife, Purette, because she was in grief about, yes, that, but also our displacement and disconnection from our friends and so on. And the counselor wanted us to slow down and focus on one person or the other's feelings. And we started with Purette's. And so when she would say, I'm feeling pain and disconnection, I was interpreting that as critical of me because I'm performance oriented. I didn't husband you well. I have made a mistake in the job. This and that was all about me. And all the while I'm talking about me, I'm not listening to her. Just like you were saying when you're listening to music and then telling yourself to listen to music, I was not listening to the music of her voice in her grief. And after several sessions, I started to get it, to realize that I need to decouple my self assessment from my attending to her.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to focus on her, listening to the music, and not have in my head all the things that I'm doing wrong or right. Instead, if, and the irony is wrong or right about caring for people. Here it is. I have a real live person in front of me I can care for, and I'm playing in my head the tape of how to be a better caring person
Mm-hmm.
and successful in life. And here it is. This is life. Success in life was to attend to my wife. And over several sessions, and then we developed a greater ability to have one of us have a strong feeling and the other time out. Let's pay attention to that person's feelings, and we'll deal with the solutions and the blame later. But
Mm-hmm.
let's at least get on the same emotional page. And we have since tried to we have coached. Anytime I perform a wedding, I teach couples of that kind of a of a pattern for listening to each other.
Mm-hmm.
It follows the principle from the book of James, which says, "Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, quick to listen. Slow to speak, slow to anger, quick to listen." And there's a principle in that in all sorts of settings, and certainly in with somebody we love and are trying to love. So, growth happens through safe people or safe places that are created by those safe people.
Mm-hmm.
You created a safe place for me by acknowledging and hearing well those setbacks of my life. I finally created a safe place for my dear wife by acknowledging her feelings and having a feeling about that and getting on the same page until we were both the same feeling.
Mm-hmm.
An example of that could be, just if you're puzzled, somebody could be, I'm feeling hurt that you didn't do the dishes. Oh, you're hurt. I feel sad that you're hurt. Not self defensive, not angry that you didn't notice what I did do, but I'm sad that you're hurt. Oh, knowing that you're sad about my being hurt, I need to feel reassured. Oh, you feel reassured about my being sad about you being hurt. I feel closer to you. Oh, you feel closer to me. I feel closer to you. That you feel closer to me because are sad that I was hurt because. So once you get to the same feeling, you have unity, you have harmony, you have affection, you have a safe place. And very often couples have to be taught how to do that. Good friends need to know how to do that. You don't have to be married to learn how to do that with people. But we need safe people in our lives if we are going to grow. Growth is not an individualistic enterprise. We've seen in the Olympics all these images of the fact, and even some commercials have taken advantage of this theme, that behind every athlete there was a team.
Mm.
And then even in a team, even if they're an individual athlete, they need to recognize that they grow because even their opponent causes them to be a better athlete because they're such a good opponent. And we've seen people in the same athletic event who have been rivals for many years of different countries. And at the end of their competition, they hug each other and say, "You've made me a better swimmer, runner, uh, hurdler, etc." And then the other says the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
My point is, we must acknowledge that growth is not an individual undertaking. Unless we are growing in loving others and loving God, we haven't grown. And to grow, we need others, safe others, and a safe relationship with God.
Hmm.
So
I will be honest with you, Tom. I
that's a good idea.
Yeah, I don't relate to the theory that we need another person to grow
Huh.
as individuals. I do think that individuals can provide guidance on how we can grow as individuals, but I think that it is up to me to initiate self growth. And I just reference, for example, exercise. I do power walking, and there's no one who tells me, like, you need to exercise 3 days a week. There's no one to call me to tell me I need to wake up and get up at 8 o'clock in the morning to do it. It's something that I sense intuitively prior to me being overweight. And I did not like the sensation of feeling fatigued and lethargic. So I decided I'm going to put forth an effort of exercising in hopes that these sensations will subside. And as a result of that initiation, I did feel better. I will say that when mentioning to others about this act, they did demonstrate supportiveness and encouragement for me to continue this pattern.
Mhm.
But I think it's ultimately up to me to initiate healthy activities. And so this is why I don't relate.
I think, yeah, maybe we disagree, maybe not as deeply as. I mean, I hear your disagreement. I would say yes, there is a personal responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
However, there is no way that we have created our physical bodies, to respond to exercise and good food. We didn't create physical bodies. We didn't create that food. We didn't come up with those good exercises. Um, so much of what we have has been handed to us by other human beings
Mm-hmm.
or by our creator around us. There's the nature and so on. Yes, there's the human response, the individual responsibility to respond, but we didn't create it all. Even language and a brain that responds to language and a brain that can think. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I didn't create my thinking brain. So I wouldn't go too far on the whole idea of self growth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do think we are made to live in community, and ultimately, what good is my growth unless it actually um, ends up caring for other parties, other individuals, other people more effectively, unless it helps them grow. So my individual growth, I think, is measured by how well we love. I mean, the scriptures say, what are the two greatest commands? Jesus said, love God, love others. So if I grow, but it is defined in such a way that it doesn't uh, change me into a lover of others and a lover of God, then I probably am self deluded. Um, a dip. Putin, the president of Russia, might think he's growing in some of the things that he's doing because he's exerting more power and authority and intimidating more parts of the world. But I wouldn't call that growth. It's not issuing forth in love. It's just he's becoming more powerful. Well, that's not the good kind of growth, maybe. Anyway, we might be on the same page, but I hear you're saying that,
I
and it's worthy to at least acknowledge each other's.
Yeah, I think my response to the question, if we are growing ourselves, then what is the point? My response to that is I am growing so I can enhance my perspective, awareness of myself, and harmonize myself with the world and the universe, because and even God or the universe, because it would seem that just based on occurrences outside of my body that growth is happening. And so if I am growing, hopefully my actions can inspire others.
Mhm.
And that's where the relationship can come into play.
I think you see that. I'd want to say if I want to know if I've been growing lately on something, I ask my wife
Mm,
or and the others near me. Like Fred was asking me for the wedding for the baby shower. Did you have a good time?
mm-hmm,
My daughter asked me if I had a good time, and I said to Purette, I don't know if my daughter felt I had a good time or not. I think I'm concerned about whether she felt served by me,
hmm,
and Dan, my son-in-law, felt served by me, and if you felt served by me because you were helping, how did how did you feel? And she listed half a dozen things that she felt I did for my daughter and son-in-law, and another half a dozen things she felt I had done for her. And that reassured me that, oh, good. As much as it was a difficult thing for me to enter into this, I sometimes get overwhelmed by the complexity of her parties and gatherings and plannings. I still entered into trying to love on the people and participate in helping out. And if she felt loved by me, then I grew. I
Hmm.
think
Hmm.
I grew. Yeah.
I can relate to what you're saying. The way I interpret what you're saying, that's the way I interpret that statement is you are to experience a reflection of your acts is a resource. The reflection is your wife telling you that um, or giving you that reassurance is the reflection of your act by asking you, did you have a good time? Um, and that I think that can be a resource, and I think that is valuable. Yet I will say, based on the theory of possibility, if if an individual is not in a circumstance where there's no one around to ask that question, how will they then be able to live a fulfilled life? And I think that for me, I think it's possible that one may be alone, and if they are alone, meaning alone without another individual in their orbit, it may take an enhanced sense of awareness uh, on their behalf to realize that the acts that they've done are genuinely fulfilling and have purpose. If you can relate to what I'm saying.
I think we're both saying there's no growth without connection to people
Mm.
and to persons. God is a person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's no growth without connection and greater loving of others. And there's also no growth without pain and setbacks and difficulty and struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. By the way, I want to apologize for this. I look like I'm scarred up. I think I had a swollenness in my eye, and it's still kind of showing. So I'm not quite this ugly,
It's okay.
just a little less ugly normally.
There's a shadow. There's a shadow.
Yeah.
So I can't see it that
I was asking Kite, did he have any makeup I can use? Please, please
way.
send some over.
We're going to transition to the next section of the podcast, which is called the multiple intelligence theory. For those who are unaware of what the multiple intelligence theory is, I'll give a brief description. When it comes to intellect, there are two popularized theories. One is more popular than the other. The first suggests that we as individuals have three forms of intellect, which would be scientific, mathematical, and linguistic. Linguistic alludes to writing. So, this theory was presented by a theorist named Frederick Beignet, and this theory has been adopted by uh, academic institutions, and I reference those students who take SAT exams. We're which also included myself. When we're tested, we are tested because we're tested on math, English, and writing. And depending on how well you do on the SAT exam, will could determine your admittance to the next academic level, which would be college. And so this SAT exam is suggested to be based off of the the theory that we as individuals have three forms of intellect. Alternatively, there's another theory called the multiple intelligence theory, which was founded by a theorist named Howard Gardner. Howard Gardner suggests that we have nine intelligences, that which also include the three intelligences that I mentioned. The other six of the nine intelligences are musical, as existential, interpersonal, bodily kinesthetic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and spatial. The reason why I present this theory in the podcast is for those people who are unaware of the multiple intelligence theory and could be experiencing low self-esteem because they may not have high degrees of intellect in the mathematical, writing, or scientific areas of the mind. They may actually have high degrees in the six others, which could boost self esteem as a result of exposure to the multiple intelligence theory, which is what I'm hoping for. So, um, Tom, what I want to ask you is, of the nine multiple intelligences, which one or more do you sense you have high degrees in? Additionally, how would you suggest to others to enhance their degrees of intellect in the ones that you sense you also have this high degree of in?
Um, Thanks for asking, Kite. In my studies to get my credential, and even before, I was familiar with Gardner. We were introduced to, and it came up a lot, Gardner's different intelligences. This has become a paradigm, as you said, in the academic realm. Teachers are encouraged to discern as best they possibly can the various intelligences of their students. A big and difficult task. It, Short of that pursuit, what we are encouraged to do is make our instruction touch on several of these intelligences, so that at least, even if we don't know all the students' array of intelligences, each student, I mean, I have 180 students a year. Um, at least we are doing our best to not just be um, using one of these intelligences for the ways that we present our subject matter. Um, um, Having said that, um, I'm a math teacher, so math and logical appeal to me. But I think I am also musical, secondarily, and I, I'm interpersonal down at the bottom. Aware of and sensing people's feelings is an important aspect of that. I'm also linguistic. Obviously, I have to talk to communicate math concepts to students. So I think those are my strengths. I would just say musical, logical, mathematical, interpersonal, and then linguistic. Although, I was an athlete in high school, so bodily kinesthetic matters. Brett and I love to dance. I think the weakest I am is probably with regard to the naturalist. I, I like science and nature, but I could just as easily be in a coffee shop at a Starbucks or somewhere on a self on a laptop. I have some opinions about how one can strengthen their sense of personal well-being with regard to these different. Uh, let's see. Somebody's asking, what about Essential Tom? My Essential
Existential.
Tom?
He's asking you, do you sense that you have as existential heightened as existential intelligence, which refers to
Oh,
that?
existential.
Yes.
Existential, Tom. Okay. Talking, what is it? Tackling the question of why we live and why we die. That makes sense. Thank you. I think that's Ahmad. Ahmad, sure. Um, that's an issue that comes up when you're ever dealing with issues of spirituality and religion and so on. It's the big questions of why come up. I think that's an important thing to me. I had really thought of that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, can I address that one question that you raised? I think there is wisdom in knowing our strengths and taking heart in the fact that we do have some strengths.
Mm-hmm.
They may not be the academic, as you said, the reading, writing, and arithmetic realm of the SAT that gets you into college and on to higher levels of educational attainment. Um, that doesn't translate well by spatial, interpersonal, body kinesthetic. Not those are different pursuits. I'm going to say one thing: God has made people very diverse. Our brains and individuality is such that these are all various strengths, and they are all wonderful, and they are part of what it means to be um, humans in community, knowing that other humans have other abilities that we don't, and they can open up to us the realms of knowledge and discovery that we wouldn't have that strength in or bias toward because of their. So it's great to be aware that the different types of intelligences are out there. That's a wonderful thing. It's a gift to each individual, and each of us are gifted and then have that gift to be able to give to others in varying abilities. What I want to also say is that these are all ways of loving others. I try to encourage young people who are trying to figure out their sense of well-being and have a high self-esteem and so on. I don't think high self-esteem is ultimately satisfied by people giving you compliments or by developing greater and greater abilities if they never translate into loving others,
Mm-hmm.
meeting the needs of others. And if we instead see that all of us have a score on any one of these nine, how many are there? There are nine. Any one of these nine realms, all of us have a score of strength, relative strength to the others and to other people. And when maybe I'm low in the naturalist, but I am strengthened when we were just came back from an Alaskan cruise, and one of the things we did on the cruise is we got off the boat and we heard a naturalist explaining the wonders of of Alaska. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know anything about it, but that person was a strong in the naturalist, and my weak in that was able to comprehend and then learn more. And that person loved on me by explaining more about the nature around us in Alaska. And my point is, don't just get strong for strong's sake so you can be self sufficient. Rather, get strong in a realm so that you can love on others. Every one of these are avenues of love. And when you love well, you will have a good self esteem.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting.
Self esteem comes from doing what we are designed to do. We are designed to love, and these are avenues of love.
Mm-hmm.
So just getting strong in these realms, but disconnected from a love of others, is inadequate. A high self esteem, a proper self esteem, comes from doing the things that are truly valuable. What's valuable? Human beings, persons. Love on people through these different avenues. And that's the so if we're strong in something, be as strong as we can possibly be in that area, and use it to love others.
Can one love self?
Well, I think one already does love self.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I think there's a false thinking about self love. If our love for ourselves, or our appreciation for ourselves, is dependent upon being as good in all these realms as LeBron James or Steph Curry or Simone Biles, and their athleticism, then we're going to have a low self esteem. We have to value that which is truly valuable, love. And these are only ways of expressing love. Every one of us has been given a way to express love. Even people with mental or physical disabilities, as we say, all of us, even they, have a way to love people. Now, it may not be that they can love people as well as Kite can in the musical realm or in the existential realm or whatever it is that Kite might be strong in, but they can love, if that's what they're strong at, then they can love people to the degree they are able to.
Mm-hmm.
So, everyone, this is a human being, all these 9 things. And human beings are to love God and people with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. There it is. All our heart, soul, mind, and strength are these 9 realms.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I apply myself to that pursuit, however well I do is not in comparison to another person. Our problem with self esteem and the whole self esteem mantra that's been around for about 30 or 40 years is we assume self esteem is enriched by either self aggrandizement, I'm doing really well, or comparison to another party. And both of those are flawed. If instead I'm not, I have a high self esteem because I'm better than they are at this, or I have a high self esteem because I have to have a high self esteem and I just talk myself into it. No, that disconnects us from the real purpose of this way of being. Of this is a human being. This is a human being. These 9 intelligences. Instead, whatever our capacity is, if we have applied ourselves to the greatest of our ability, with zest, with with a growth mindset, if we have applied ourselves and we just nudged it up from a 1 to a 2, and the theoretical scale goes up to 100, if that's our ability and we have done that and loved people with that, we will have a better self-esteem. I believe all people, who was it that said this? All people seek their own pleasure. We are all pursuit of our own pleasure. We have an esteem for ourselves. Even C.S. Lewis said, even the person who commits suicide is committing suicide not because they have a low self-esteem, but because they are pursuing a greater pleasure in the scenario of their annihilation.
Hmm.
But that's a self-pursuit. So I think it's not helpful to just talk about self-esteem as you should love yourself better or not. We all already love ourselves, even the self-destructive person. They're doing that because they think that'll make their life better or
Where
happier.
what I would say in
Yeah,
response,
go ahead.
what I
I've
would
been
say.
blabbing a lot.
No, it's okay. I appreciate your expression. I can relate to what some of what you were saying, especially the example of using Simone Biles or LeBron James as a comparison to one's loving self or growing self. Because I think when it comes to the concept of self growth or the activity of self growth, it seems that self growth is not a competitive activity,
Right.
especially if growth is internalized. If self growth is starts with the inside, how could I ever demonstrate or flaunt my self growth to anyone else? Because no one can see inside of me. So I think that self growth is not a competitive activity. So I relate to
Good,
what you're
good,
saying.
good. Yeah. Yeah, if we get our well-being from how we're doing compared to others, that's a flaw. That's a problem. We need to get our well-being by how well we're loving.
And I know that you have to go soon. So I will proceed on to the next phase of the podcast, which is the final one. And I appreciate everyone listening in. This is my favorite section. It is the interpreting expression section. So, to give insight on what this is to those who are listening, individuals express themselves. That could be through dance, music, or even verbalizing. Also, writing. And these expressions can be relatable to someone who is of witness to them. And from my perspective, expressions can inspire those who are of a witness to that expression to hopefully grow as a result of someone expressing themselves. And a verbal or written expression can come in the form of a statement or a question. So this is the description of the interpreting expression section of the podcast. What Tom and I will do is um, read the this today's episode's expression and then share our own individualistic interpretations of it in hopes that we can relate to our interpretations and also hopefully other people can relate to them as well, um, with the intent to inspire through our own expressions of interpretation. Today's expression is Tom. The universe gives you what you are, not what you want. The people and situations that are not your vibrational match will be removed from your life, no matter how hard you try. My question is, how would you relate to this? Well, two questions. How would you interpret this expression? And also, how would you relate to it?
As I've pondered this, I've tried to make some sense of it, and so the universe gives you what you are, not what you want. Is sort of the initial statement, and then the rest kind of describes that the people and situations that are not your vibrational match. In other words, they're not. You might want it, but it's not your vibrational match. I suppose that's what it's saying. So this is a parallel to what you want, and then they will be removed from your life no matter how hard you try. So you might try, just as in the word try and want are I see them as a parallelism there. Not what you want, no matter how hard you try. Um, you want something you're trying for, you're wanting to get it. So I think this is saying things that are removed. The universe gives you what you are, not what you want. So the difference between what you want and what you end up with what you are, I think, is that which is removed. I think that's what it's restating. But
Mm-hmm.
I would say that there's certainly some truth to this. I would first say this is seeming to say that the universe um, is an impersonal. I don't know if there's. I I perceive what's out there is is there's a personal God that has created everything, and behind it all I don't know if this universe is inclusive of God or not. If the universe was destroyed, I believe that there would still be God. That they are not one and the same, like Eastern thinking. Um, but there's a God who's independent of the universe, and the universe is dependent upon God. But I do think part of the way that God works, He doesn't always give you what you want, but what you would be best for you. What you are, maybe another way of saying this. And I've talked about growth. Growth doesn't come through all the good stuff that happens to us. Growth comes through difficulty. We adjust ourselves, our basketball shooting, our gymnastic movements, our musical expression. We adjust our trying to solve a math problem. We adjust, we change, we grow because we got it wrong or we made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that there is something to that. I would just tie that in with what we've said earlier, at least what I've said, that growth comes through difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
We may want it otherwise, but it's not going to happen. We just become complacent and we don't grow.
Have there been people and or situations that were removed from your life, and if so, uh, what would they be, and why would you theorize they were removed?
I mean, there have been some. I had a friend when I was a young kid, a 13-year-old or so. He was funny. I just loved hanging around with Greg Hardesty. Greg, if you're out there, I really enjoyed you. Um, we were friends, but I think he was removed from me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just a brief story. We went to Disneyland once, and Greg thought it was funny to spit on people. And he spit on one of the workers in one of the rides in a darkened area where you couldn't really see. And we were called up short and asked, "Did you spit?" And Greg said, "No, somebody over there in that other car spit and got on me as well." And then when we got out of the ride, they came up to Greg and me and said there was nobody in the next car over.
Mm.
They knew they nailed it, and I think there was a part of me that found it fun to be around Greg. But I'm glad at least we ended up moving. I'm in a sense glad he was removed from my life because I think I was going an unhealthy way.
Okay, I can appreciate that. The way I interpret this statement is the universe gives you what you are. That I want to focus on the words "what you are." I think that could be translated into the universe gives you what you reflect,
Hmm.
not what you want. Because a want can be conceptualized, but that doesn't necessarily mean your acts uh, outside of the conceptualization reflect um, who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So a person can say, I want $1 million, but are they actually putting forth an effort to experience such an opportunity, such as starting a business or making investments? One can easily conceptualize and say, I want $1 million, but I don't think just by conceiving that that reflects one's conductivity in the present moment. And so that's the way I would interpret that aspect or that section of it.
I like that.
And then the people and situations that are not your vibrational match will be removed from your life no matter how hard you try. I think that seems to be alluding to what you had said earlier regarding attachment and how people, a certain attachment style, may want to cling on to an experience, um, even if the experience is to their detriment. And I think probably for me, how I relate to that is there was a woman that I was attracted to, and it seemed like all was well in terms of me courting her at the time. But surprisingly, the she she distanced herself from me, and I didn't realize at the time uh, how much I wanted to experience more of her. Yet, despite my efforts of trying to reach out to her after she became distant, the I did not experience a reflection of my actions, which was the engagement of texting her or calling her. And so it was the to not see someone or not experience someone. It's a challenging situation because the question can come to your mind. Well, why did I experience you in the first place? If only for you to
Mm-hmm.
go away. But I think
Mm-hmm.
the lesson that I learned was all experiences are seemingly temporal anyway. And the experience that I had with her, I appreciated. And I also have to have a sense of awareness that she had a shift in attraction to myself. So I need to be content with the changes outside of myself, similar to the wind in the sky. It shifts and it goes as it pleases. I can't control that. And but I do appreciate it because it provides me with air that allows me to breathe. So I think that's the way I interpret that other part. And no matter how hard I try, experiences are not for me to be in control of, but more to experience and appreciate. Yeah, that's how I interpret that
I
time.
love the fact that you emphasize appreciate. Gratitude is so important.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, do you would you care to comment any further on this expression, or
Well, I think that wraps it up. It's,
okay?
um, I mean, so often gratitude is so important. I like what you emphasized about that. Often we experience life differently as we sense that we are loved and are grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Great. But this is this is the conclusion of the Journey of Self Growth podcast episode 20. I appreciate all those who have tuned in. I sense that by you demonstrating a willingness to initiate experiencing this podcast, hopefully you have gained resource through our um, expressions, which can hopefully inspire you to grow yourself as well. I think I've grown in this experience through listening to Tom, and hopefully vice versa for him, which I think is
thank you.
the
Yes.
purpose of living, is to grow so that we can also hopefully inspire others to emulate such behavior. It seems like nature, people, animals, and even seemingly God, what they all have in common is the ability to grow. And I think this is where we come harmonized and are able to relate to one another through our acts of growing oneself. So I thank everyone for tuning in. Tom, what would your parting words be?
I'm grateful, Kite, for the opportunity to express and explore my own thoughts and bounce them off of you and hear your reactions. It's been a joy.
I agree. Um, Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you all. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. Good night.
Thanks, Ahmad, for your comments.